Welcome to our Sunday evening service online for a few more weeks, and we're thankful for all the feedback, almost 200 surveys we've received. Tonight is the deadline. If you haven't given feedback on how best we as a church can serve you and your family, can really fellowship, evangelize, give ourselves to doctrine and prayer and communion, we're looking forward to how we can do that even more in the days ahead when we can meet in person on Sunday evenings. Tonight, we are going to hear from our 4 gospel partners in Reno, Nevada, the 4 different families, the Keltings, the Gleisers, the Wesses, and the Tilsons, who have partnered with us through Open Door to take the hope of the gospel to Reno. And so we're having a chance through Missions Conference to partner with the Liaos in Indonesia and giving to their gym. Hopefully we'll be able to raise a good portion of the $40,000 that they need to put a roof and the ground floor of this gym up in their Borneo campus. But we also want to partner with these 4 families, and so Pastor Smith is going to lead a roundtable discussion tonight, and then next Sunday night we'll have part 2. So thank you for tuning in.
Hi, I'm Dave Smith, and I serve as the missions pastor at Morningside Baptist Church in Greenville, South Carolina. And as part of our missions ministry, we have a full service mission agency that operates out of our church called Open Door Baptist Missions. And here at Morningside and Open Door, we are really excited about the opportunity to partner with the Hope for Reno team. And so the purpose of this is to have the 4 team members of the Hope for Reno team, and God has called them to do church planting out in Reno, Nevada. And so I want to give them the opportunity to tell you all about it and how to get involved and partner with them. So to start out, I'd like for each of them to introduce themselves and just tell us briefly about their family's path to this point of serving together. And so James Tilson, James, why don't we start first with you?
Yes, sir. Thank you, David. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is James Tilson, and I got on a church planting journey several years ago when I was in college, which is actually pushing many years ago now, and had a guest preacher who kind of put the seed thought in my mind to head out to the West at some point and to plant a church in a Western city. I had never lived in the West. I grew up in the Southeast. That was what I knew, but I never got that bug away from me. It stayed with me, and I ended up moving out to the Phoenix area and ministered at Northwest Valley Baptist Church for 15 years there as the youth pastor, coordinating youth, children's ministries, and those types of things. All the while, having moved west, still had my eyes and ears open for possibilities of a church plant, and basically just came to the conclusion that if I was ever going to plant, I needed to do it with a team. I did not feel I had the calling or the gifting to try to do a solo type of church plant. And so had that burden for a while, but obviously it just took some time for the Lord to build up a team around. But basically my thought was if the Lord would build up a team, we would go. And so that is what happened. That process began in about 2015 is probably the first seed thoughts of us having the team that we have now. So here we are entering 2021. So about 5.5 years later, after some of those initial conversations, and excited to have a team, excited to head to Reno, Nevada.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'm Andy Gleiser, and I'm part of this team. So thankful for that. My wife, Bryn, and I were married in 2001, and we moved to Indianapolis, Indiana. And I served as the youth pastor there at Burge Terrace Baptist Church for 13 years. And then that church released us of our pastoral responsibilities to send us out in itinerant evangelism. We did that for about 6.5 years. And then here we have now, of course, transitioned to Reno to be part of this church planting team. And it was in 2015 that James sat down with me and he said, I want to share my my dream with you. I want to team church plant out in the Western United States. I thought it was a great idea. I had no thought ever of myself being a church planter because I felt like they have to have a certain mentality, and that's not my personality. But when he shared his dream of doing it together as a team, that really sparked my interest. And so I asked him, well, if you could have anybody you would want I think my term was your dream team, who would it be? And I walked straight into his trap. He said, well, I want you. And then he mentioned some other people as well. And I don't even remember who else he said. I was floored by that. And the main reason he said is, or one of the reasons, you know, Andy, you're a pastor with an evangelist heart, and you will bring some gifting that I don't have. I will bring some gifting you don't have. If we can get other people to bring their pastoral gifting in the church, that would be fantastic. So that began a very long process, which I could go on, but I won't for the other guys' sake. But that's how we got about it. God just worked in our own hearts to knit us together.
I'll go ahead and go. This Stephen West. Like James, my burden for church planting began a long time ago. It began for me in college, being able to hear the burden of a man who wanted to plant a church in Seattle, Washington, and that just kind of sparked a long journey for me, desiring to be involved in church planting. I had a real burden for the western part of the United States. At that point, everything was about praying towards making mission trips out and just exploring God's will in this regard. I made effort to figure that out. My wife and I believe God called us to the city of Las Vegas. This was 12, 13 years ago, and had over 10 years of wonderful ministry there. Loved it. Still miss it to this day. It's a great place to be able to be a part of the gospel. We went there solo. We desired a team, but the Lord didn't provide a team like what we have right here. And yet we just continued to do what the Lord called us to do and be faithful to it. Saw a lot of blessings along the way. But a couple of years ago, as I was very burdened for what God was doing in our own lives, that's whenever a mutual friend that many might know here in this particular Zoom conference, Ryan Horkavy, who told me a little bit about James Tilson, who I had not known before, and said maybe it would be good to chat with James and talk a little bit with him about his vision. Enjoyed what I heard. He also introduced me to Andy Gleiser and talked with him. And as I talked with both of these guys, the thing came across to me that was very clear that they thought the same way about church planting ministry that I did. And it was very clear, the philosophy of ministry. And so it took about a year. I resisted at first, but it became clear after about a year of pursuing it that this was clearly what God's will was for my family. And we are thrilled now, after 10 years of solo ministry, to be able to be involved as part of a team.
Well, I'm Daniel Kelting, and for our family, I think the Lord really began to spark an interest in church planting when I was in high school. I had been going to a small church plant. Our family had been attending, and were members of a small church plant when I was in high school. And the pastor there, who is now my father-in-law, really discipled me and taught me a lot about. Really just discipled me in the Lord, but just through that exposure to church planting, I think the Lord used that to just kind of spark an interest in church planting for me. The Lord really, I think, cemented that desire into my heart when I was in college. In college, I got to travel on our college's ministry team. And we traveled throughout all throughout the West, and got to see a lot of churches, many really small churches throughout the West. But one of the things that I recognized and realized while we were traveling was just how few churches there were in the West. And so the Lord really used that to burden my heart with a desire to be a part of church planting ministry. Well, after I graduated from college, I continued serving at the church we were at there in Phoenix, actually my father-in-law's church at Hope Baptist. But then our family, after we got married, moved to a different part of town, and we began attending at Berean Baptist Church in Santan Valley. And there, the Lord called, and the church called me to become the music and the youth pastor there. And all the while I was trying to do that, I was working another job as well, and trying to do seminary at the same time. And so seminary was coming really slowly, and the Lord was burdening my heart to finish school so that I could continue on with ministry and actually jump into church planting. So the Lord eventually brought me 3.5 years ago, brought me to Ironwood and Faith Baptist Church here in California, where I've been able to finish, work on finishing my seminary degree. And while I was here, Pastor David Brock, he's the pastor of the church here that we are members at. He struck up a conversation with James, actually, and Pastor David knew that I was interested in church planting and desiring to do that. And so apparently they struck up a conversation, and David let James know that our family was interested in church planting. And up to that point, my wife and I, we'd actually been targeting Utah and had a desire to go to Utah to church plant, and kind of through that exposed us to this team church planting model. And the Lord really used that to convince my heart that that's the gifting, my particular gifting, and the gifting of my wife, and just the way that God created our family, that we would be best suited for a team church planting effort. And so I was convinced of that, and yet I just didn't know quite where we were going or how we were doing that yet. And then James gives me a call. For me, it was out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it all, and began to ask me, "Hey, what would you think about church planting in Reno?" And so, as we prayed about that and thought about that, the Lord just made it really clear that was what He had for our family. And so, a little over a year ago now, we joined Hope for Reno.
Thanks for sharing that, and we're so excited and thankful for God's leading in your lives and your family's lives, and really excited about this team concept of church planting. And so next, I'd like if each of you would describe your particular role on the team and what excites you the most about serving in that capacity. So Stephen, let's start with you on that one.
Yeah, the team, as I said earlier, being solo for so long, the team concept is thrilling to me. There are a lot of different models of church planning out there, and it doesn't make one better than the other. But as the Lord leads in so many different ways, to be able to bring together such a close group, and we even see this in the New Testament as well. With Paul and Barnabas starting off there, and they had a young intern with them as well. But this was the model that they used, and it's a great one. For me, what I'm excited about is to be able to focus on the gift set that God has given me. And one of my passions over the last 10 years has really become discipleship, really the process of disciple making, helping people to come develop from the starting initiation of salvation, give them the proper nutrition and exercising of their faith so that they become healthy members of the body of Christ, ready to reproduce themselves. And that's what we want. We want a healthy church, all the members reproducing themselves. And then, of course, as the church members reproduce, it's going to become necessary that the church plant reproduces itself. That's just going to be the outflow of that. But for myself personally, just being involved in the process of helping people mature, be healthy, and prepared to reproduce themselves is what I'm excited about, being a discipleship pastor.
So I'll go ahead and jump in next. I will be functioning as the lead pastor for vision and for the preaching for our team, and that's something that I got to do to a certain degree in my youth pastor capacity. I certainly enjoyed having my flock at that time, as it were, within the bigger church context. But it's something I always had a burden to do. It wasn't something I felt I ever had to do. Honestly, it was way more important for me to be on a pastoral team in a church plant scenario than it was to hold any particular position. But I love the preaching of the word, and then just the idea of leading vision, or at least putting that out there for our discussions and our team. So that's the role I will be having. And I'm excited for the possibility of just, how do we obviously take new believers, take people who join our team, not just pastoral team, but our broader launch team. How do we disciple them? How do we grow them through the preaching of the word? How do we reach out to the lost through the preaching of the word? Even just the planning. And I mean, obviously we have a wealth of resources in the Bible, so sometimes it's hard to pick where to go. But very much looking forward to that, and to just seeing the path ahead. Again, as Stephen said, not just for hopefully just a single church plant, but hopefully for a church that will birth other churches as well.
I think with any leadership team, roles always overlap and so forth, but yet there is a definition of different roles. What I'm coming in and is my title, and I had a lot of fun with this, is pastor for outreach and strategic multiplication. I have to take a breath in between that to get it all out. But basically, I am providing the pastoral leadership for outreach. I want to help to equip the church in connecting with the community, and also how to make disciples for those who are non-believers primarily. And that's my great passion. Ways in which to do that, of course, equipping them and providing the encouragement in that and the resources. Also, another aspect of my role, I believe, will be connecting with area church pastors who are preaching the gospel. How can we effectively reach the city for the cause of Christ? And there are some gospel preaching churches here in the city of Reno. And so it's been a joy to already starting to meet many of these pastors and sharing our burden, hearing their burden, seeing their faithfulness. And there's also our desire as a church planting team. We are but the initial church planting team. Lord willing, we'd like to see multiple churches planted. I guess that would start with one, and then we go to two. So with that, we need more church planting teams. We need more church planting leadership teams. And so all of us will have active role in mentoring that, but that's a particular burden of mine as well.
My role is I'll be the pastor overseeing the corporate worship and really member care as well. So what that means is, I get to have the opportunity to organize the music ministry, get to lead, participate in leading the corporate worship of the church. And then I also get to make sure that the members within our local body are cared for, that their needs are met. And so, this is one thing that I'm really excited about. These are both areas that the Lord has given me a passion for, particularly in worship. I believe that the worship of the church really shapes our affection towards God and to one another, to our community as well. And so having the opportunity to be able to be a part of shaping that for the glory of God in our local body is just really exciting to me. And then just the opportunity to really get to know each individual within the church and build relationships where we can carry out the one another's for each other, and just kind of make sure that is happening well for the edification of the church and the glory of God. That's all really exciting stuff to me.